I've created some new tiers for our Patreon. On top of many of our original perks, I've added Discord live events, spoiler chat videos, and more. You can get all the info at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Alright, well my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Godzilla, King of the Monsters? Stick around and find out.
Ho ha, Gojira, Gojira, ho ha, Gojira, Gojira.
I'm tired. I'm sick. Need a haircut. But I'm still Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, here with my uncut review of Godzilla, King of the Monsters. The synopsis on IMDb reads, the new story follows the heroic efforts of the cryptozoological agency Monarch as its members face off against a battery of god-sized monsters, including the mighty Godzilla, who collides with Mothra, Rodan, and his ultimate nemesis, the three-headed King Ghidorah. When these ancient superspecies, thought to be mere myths, rise again, they all vie for supremacy, leaving humanity's very existence hanging in the balance, because of course you have to have humanity's existence hanging in the balance. Alright, so I didn't, you can watch my review for the, I believe it was 2014 movie Godzilla, which was the reboot of this new Godzilla universe, and I was not a real fan of that. I did like what they did in this movie compared to that movie. It's going for much more human drama than the last movie did, taking a little time for some character motivations and backstories, giving, like, I think some time to shots that just allowed the actors to perform, you know, and so the element of pacing and how they invested in drama and dramatic beats in this movie was greatly appreciated by me. I love monster movies. I tend to enjoy the more humanoid-sized monster movies like Aliens, Predator, John Carpenter's The Thing, stuff like that, but I'm warming up over the years to these giant skyscraper-sized, you know, monsters. But for me, they need to be represented in the world physically in a way that kind of makes sense to me. Like, I could never get into the old, Ultraman. There was an Ultraman series. You know those, I mean, there's a bunch of, like, a dime a dozen Japanese live-action series involving people turning into giant heroes or giant robots or giant monsters, and they fight in the city and stuff like that, and there's massive destruction. And it just looked so fake to me because of, like, well, for numerous reasons. But one of the reasons that was key is the way they moved. If you're going to have them move at, like, you know, what like scale-wise would be normal human speed, then there should be repercussions of that movement in the form of, like, big waves of air just being whooshed around. So there should just be constant, like, you know, almost hurricanes around creatures of that size moving that fast, you know. The other option is to have them go really slow and lumbering and stuff, and that's another way that movies will sometimes do giant, you know, characters. I don't like that as much. I felt like what they did with this movie and the movement of the creatures was a nice halfway point, where it was slower than, you know, scale monster, you know, movement, or like a cheetah or like a lion or some kind of comparable, you know, animal in the wild animal in the world. It's definitely slower than that, but it was faster than some of the really slow, lumbering giant type stuff we've seen in giant monster movies and giant creature movies of the past. So, and there were repercussions of that movement. Just having one creature fly, you know, over a city caused, like, massive shock waves that were just destroying buildings. Just him flying over it, you know. And so I appreciate things like that that bring these monsters into the world and make them into more than just monsters. They become like these natural disasters, you know. And I'll get to that when I talk about the effects a little bit more. But it's still very much a giant monster movie, as I said, even though they did invest some nice time in character development and character drama. Lots of giant monster action, lots of giant monster fighting, but with a quote-unquote hide the monster approach mixed in with that showcases just the immensity and awe of these creatures along with the action. I think they kind of ease us into seeing these giant monsters by showing them silhouetted or obscured a little bit or from a distance, you know, and I think that also helps me, at least as a viewer, appreciate the scale of the creatures, and just it eases me into accepting them as a grounded reality reality, in this world. And so I really appreciated that. But don't get me wrong, they're not hiding the monster the whole time. They go back and forth between some of that hide the monster type technique and then also just in your face crazy giant titan monster action, So if you're in it for that, you're going to get that itch scratched. But if you're like me, and that can, if it's introduced too quickly and too much, kind of feel like ridiculous or just numbing after a while, they do some nice hide the monster Jaws type stuff. That I'm talking about the first Jaws movie, the Spielberg movie, where he's obscured. You see him through the water a little bit, but it's a blurry image a lot of the time. You don't see the shark very much at all in that first movie, and so it's a great technique in monster movies for me, because my imagination can really go to work and fill in the gaps in some great ways that CGI just fails me in. So as far as the tone goes, it does have a few jokes here and there, but they're largely playing this as serious. I do wish they would have given even more time to the character stories as they anchor the story emotionally for me. Giant monsters, maybe Godzilla is a very complex character, but I don't think there's any way for us to really know that, because he doesn't speak, and his face is not it's very alien looking, and so it's hard to read emotion if they were to try to portray subtle emotions. It would be really hard. They just don't have the tools to show us the complexity of his character and emotion in order for us to sympathize with him. We can sympathize with Godzilla, I think, in the same way that you sympathize with an animal in a movie that's like, if there's what I call a horse movie, where you've got like this family that really cares about a horse, and there's other stuff going on, but we really care about this animal, this dolphin, this horse, this whatever the animal is, this bear, we kind of care about it as an innocent animal, but not in the same way that we invest in the drama of a person whose motives we really understand and can relate to. So for me, it's important to have those character drama moments. Otherwise, I'm going to completely check out of a movie like this, and I wish they would have given me more. I applaud them and thank them for going as far as they did compared to the last movie, but I wish that we would have gotten even more. Maybe a director's cut. That'd be awesome. Let's see here. As far as the cast goes, I felt like they were all pretty solid. It's a cast that's largely populated by actors known for their dramatic work. Now, the script doesn't take advantage of that as much as I think it could, but the performers, I would say, generally elevate the material, which I always really appreciate. As far as stunts and visuals go, lots of explosions and large-scale destruction, along with the CG monsters. The hide the monster approach really did add a lot to me, a lot for me, I should say, as I mentioned earlier. And as I also said earlier, it makes the monsters more than monsters. It makes them like these giant hurricanes or volcanoes or earthquakes. It kind of turns this movie into kind of a disaster movie, where the natural disaster is a giant creature instead of an earthquake or whatever. Still, though, I have to say that usually the visuals fall flat for me when it's just two CG creatures fighting. They didn't do that for long in this movie. They would like have them going at it, but then they would cut away to show the surrounding destruction going on as a result of the fight, which I think is really important. It gives me that sense of scale. But the longer they held on just two CG monsters going at it, the less interested I became, So, because, to my cursed eye, it just looks like cartoons kind of. So, but I do think that, I suspect anyway, that fans will get a lot out of those moments of two CG creatures going at it, even if I didn't. I'd love to hear from you if you're a fan of giant monster movies or the Godzilla movies in general, and get your thoughts on this. As far as like themes, is there any material in here that might stimulate some worthwhile thought or conversation about moral, philosophical, or spiritual issues? I think so. The Titans, which is what they call the giant monsters in this movie, they're used many times to parallel either God in some nebulous sense or the various gods of historical religions. They're called the first gods at least twice in this movie. They are displayed at times with this grand beauty and awe-inspiring power that evokes almost a sense of stunned worship from the characters who see them and are just like totally taken aback and stunned as they see the majesty of these giant creatures. Godzilla himself is the defender of humanity. Even though some humans hate him, much like God, has our best interests in mind, even though many people hate him. And Godzilla is even given a crucifixion resurrection arc, which I don't think is a spoiler because it happens early enough in the movie that you're like, come on, the movie's called Godzilla, he's not staying dead, And that crucifixion resurrection arc is made all the more prominent by a strongly featured cross in the foreground of multiple key shots at the moment of his quote-unquote death. The parallel does hit its limits in a major way, given how his resurrection is handled, and I won't talk about that here. You can look at my spoiler car video at patreon.com/spiritblade productions. I'm going to get into all the details about my thoughts on the resurrection of Godzilla and some other elements in that are heavily spoiler related. But I still appreciated a number of the parallels in this movie to Christian teaching. I don't necessarily think they were intentional, but I saw them there and I welcomed them. You know, in the world of Godzilla, as presented in this movie, humans are kind of helpless and subject to a power far greater than themselves. Humans are also the cause of evil in the world, which is clearly heading in a self-destructive direction. They need a being that is both good and far more powerful than they are to sort of take center stage and make all the wrong things right, even if that means unleashing massive destruction on the world. In the real world, we are headed in a very self-destructive direction because of our choices and all the ways that we all contribute to that self-destruction. And in the end, we will need someone greater than us to intervene and set things right. But there will be both resistance to that and a lot of destruction in the process. So I look at this movie and I think, well, sure, you could easily watch this as just a giant monster movie and enjoy the rock'em sock'em Titan battles, but there are, I think, some worthwhile, sobering truths to consider that can be found in this movie too. All right, I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Pater, rent this one sometime, or wait for it like on Amazon Prime since you're already paying for that. It's a mixed bag for your tastes, but it does enough things that you're going to like to make it worth your time at some point. You guys can get my spoiler-filled reactions to Godzilla King of the Monsters in my spoiler car video series, just one of many perks available for your support at patreon.com/spiritblade productions. This one is rated PG-13 for sequences of monster action, violence, and destruction, and for some language. All right, those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe. Any way you want to share this content, I'd be really grateful for. And then I hope you'll join us soon over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.